The warm September sun climbed into the sky just before 7 a.m. and shone its warm beams across the foot of RENÉ Brunswick's large bed. She had awoken by now, but felt no immediate rush to get out of bed. Not anymore. RENÉ hadn't enjoyed the luxury of sleeping in like this for 4 years, but she felt this was earned. She felt she deserved everything she had come into. She had majored in business management and graduated at the top of her class, an accomplishment she was incredibly proud of. What she didn't appreciate were the people who would ask her what her business intentions were, because while she felt that her goals were genius, many criticized her. It was simple, RENÉ thought. She would get a degree in business management, making her the perfect wife and mother. She knew, after all the hard work she had put in over the past 4 years, that she was not interested in a career, nor was she interested in managing people anymore. Not unless they were her children, and, of course, her husband. She would manage the budget and control all of the earnings her husband brought in. She came from old money, but that was her money. Besides, while it was astounding to RENÉ that she had found someone to marry, she didn't expect it would last forever. She was content with the probable scenario in which she would bear a child or two from her reputable husband, leave him, take a lot of his money, having not touched her own account since the nuptials, and raise her children on her own as she saw fit. She had found a reputable husband, Benjamin Brunswick of Brunswick Boating and Yachts. She was a mariner's wife, or so she liked to say. Benjamin himself was too prone to seasickness to actually step foot on a yacht, but that was fine with RENÉ. She enjoyed as much time away from him as possible. He was scrawny, weak, pathetic, and if she really thought about it, unworthy of her. However, he was goddamn rich, and his brothers and father were all strapping country club men. She hoped those genes would shine through in her children. She would have tried to procure herself an alternative Brunswick, but, of course, they had all been claimed by women that RENÉ thought were far beneath them. Far beneath her. RENÉ had finally left her bed by this point and gone to the kitchen. She had a large list of to-dos for the day, but she was still in relaxation mode. Her nature was to rush, to stay busy, but she reminded herself again that she had earned this. She had put a kettle on the stove and pulled out a mug and her favorite jasmine tea. As she put the box away, she mentally noted all the things she needed to do today, fully aware that would have to wait until after her tea. She grabbed a small pile of mail and moved towards the dining room table. She sat down and looked out the window as the sun climbed higher into the sky. RENÉ had been the president of Omega Zeta Tau House at Winslow Claythorne College her junior and senior year, though she liked to say she reigned from her sophomore year because, as a sophomore, she had become VP to a president who spent most of the semester hiding a very obvious pregnancy. It was undeniable to RENÉ that this was not a good look, and so she encouraged Heidi to stay home, not attend social gatherings. She had assured her that she would manage everything at the parties in her stead, and when Heidi suggested she could come and simply not drink, RENÉ firmly pointed out,
"That would make everyone feel uncomfortable."
It was during this time that RENÉ began her campaign for presidency, which she won by a landslide the following semester, when the father of Heidi's baby ghosted, and she had to drop out to raise the child. The kettle was boiling now, and she poured it over her tea. She pulled from a cabinet some honey and squirted in a generous amount. Upon doing so, she noticed the honey seemed a little more watery than usual. She checked the expiration, but it was nowhere near expired. She shrugged.
"It's fine, RENÉ."
She put the honey away and stirred her tea. Again she told herself she had earned this luxury. Then she blew on her tea. She was about to take a sip when she noticed a small, folded-up piece of paper. She unfolded it and read it, but it was nonsensical to her. She continued to stare at it as she took a large sip of tea, but perhaps she took it too fast. She set the cup down hard, causing tea to spill out over the edges and onto the table. She was choking, coughing, trying to maintain her composure, but her throat was burning and hoarse. Then RENÉ fell over dead, the blood around her head glistening in the bright September sun. On a particularly cold evening, several days later, pledge Ginny Hester completed initiation ritual to join sorority Omega Zeta Tau. She was not, by conventional standards, the type of girl who you'd expect to see at Omega Zeta Tau. Most of the sisters were, for starters, very loud. Ginny was not loud in the slightest. The sisters were also promiscuous, current, popular, and exclusive. Ginny was none of these things, but her mother had been in Omega Zeta Tau, and so it seemed fitting for Ginny to pledge. At least, that is what Mother had always said. As a girl, Ginny was constantly encouraged to be more normal, as her mother would put it. She would insist that Ginny wear more makeup, straighten her mane of curly hair, wear shirts that pushed her girls together. But that wasn't Ginny. As quiet and introverted as Ginny was, she was not a pushover by any means. She stood her ground and pursued her own interests. And while pledging Omega Zeta Tau was perhaps the least likely thing for her to do, she had convinced herself that she could belong there. Those girls weren't like her, but maybe her presence in the group could be a beacon to other girls who enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons. Other girls who would rather read than party. Other girls who didn't like to wear makeup. And other girls who liked the things she liked.
You did well.
House President Rose Hanover sweetly commemorated Ginny as she climbed out of the man-made campus pond.
Here, let's warm you up before you catch hypothermia.
Rose handed Ginny a towel and held her close. Contrary to the aesthetic and reputation of the sorority, Rose did not approve of being mean. The girls were so mean when she had joined, and she had vowed to make a change. She had been moderately successful in this, though some suggested at the expense of the sorority. Enrollment was down, but Rose was sure it was the reputation as opposed to her leadership. However, she was in her 4th year, and thought her little, KATYA SMIRNOV, would be a suitable replacement for her. KATYA was a junior, and the senior pledge educator of the house, though she had stated on several occasions how much disdain she had for that archaic title. She would introduce herself as the
new member educator,
as the idea of pledging went against a progressive approach to Greek life that she and Rose saw eye to eye on. She truly felt blessed to have Rose as her big, which, in a sorority, is an older member to mentor and guide you through your years on campus. Rose had mentioned on several occasions how pleased she was to have Katya as her little, considering how her big, the late RENÉ Brunswick, was hardly ever enthused to have someone following her around and asking questions.
Get away from me.
Katya was big to two sophomores, Imogen Jordan, the house historian, and Frankie Oliver. The latter was sorority secretary and junior pledge educator. Katya enjoyed Frankie enough, though there were times when Frankie would express ideals and old views of Greek life that Katya was against. Frankie also refused to adapt the title
New member educator.
carelessly commenting as she loudly chewed her gum.
Educator just rolls off the tongue, don't you think?
You're incorrectly educating the new members if you use the word pledge. They are new members, and it's not pledge week, as I've heard you mention several times. It's new member educational period. I do not wish to have this discussion again.
Katya knew how to be firm when she needed to be. Frankie, who had never been fond of authority, had rolled her eyes and wandered off. Of her littles, Katya took more of a liking to Imogen. Imogen had more of an artistic flair than most of the remaining members, but RENÉ had admitted her, stating,
You're not conventionally attractive, but you're chic enough to pass for pretty.
At the time, Imogen had been thankful for the opportunity, and though RENÉ's words had stung, Imogen didn't have the confidence to recognize how wrong this statement was. A year later, and under the wing of Katya and Rose, she had gained a tremendous amount of self-worth. Presently, the aforementioned girls stood, lightly applauding Ginny, who was still wet and shivering. Rose passed the wet Ginny off to Katya and encouraged them to go back into the house, when sorority treasurer and standards officer TORI Campbell approached.
She's sweet.
She and Rose began to blow out and collect the candles that were ceremoniously placed around the small pond.
He's excited. It's cute. She was asking about big littles.
Does she have her eye on a big?
TORI asked, her tone void of any preference in answer.
She does?
Rose stopped and looked at TORI, who took entirely too long to notice.
What? Me?
Yeah. She enjoys your phlegmatic temperament. Her words. I suppose someone has to.
In the schoolyard pick we call life, I've never been first choice. I figured I would get a little by default one of these days, but to be chosen...
It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Rose came towards TORI and held her hand.
Give yourself more credit. You aren't nearly as cold as you were when you first joined.
Don't say that too loud.
It's true. OLYA has really brought you out of your shell. You are truly an odd couple. Speaking of OLYA, where was she during the ceremony? It's unlike her to miss something like that.
I'm not sure. I know she was stopping by the dean's office on her way home from class, but I don't know what about.
She texted me that they wanted to talk to me at the national office, but when I called, she said they'd already been by.
Weird. It's OLYA though, so who the hell knows?
Rose continued their earlier conversation.
What made you pick her as your big in the first place?
Well, my therapist thought it would be good for me. OLYA was the last person I wanted to choose, so my therapist insisted I choose her. I almost chose a new therapist, to be honest, but figured, why not?
And now we're inseparable.
A voice called from the shadows. Rose and TORI turned where they saw the house songmaster, OLYA BRENT, coming up the gravel path towards Winslow Pond. OLYA was a junior who had managed to pledge during Heidi's reign. She and RENÉ never got along because OLYA was fairly uncontrollable, and it was very important to RENÉ to be in control.
Everything good? We missed you at Ginny's initiation.
Rose spoke, her tone both gentle and authoritative. Missing an initiation was highly frowned upon, and in the days of RENÉ, OLYA would have been severely punished.
Oh, you're in for it.
In times like this, however, Rose felt it was worthwhile to inquire deeper.
Goddamn goose chase, Rose. Greek Life stopped me on the way to the dean's and said that National Office wanted to talk to you, but I was heading in that direction, so I stopped in. And they said Dean MANDRAKES emailed and said she wanted to speak to you directly, and I had to see that hoe about something else anyway, so I popped over. Long story short, she said everything's finalized and worked out, and we're getting a fucking house mother.
What?
Our numbers are low enough as it is. How are we supposed to pay a house mother?
OLYA threw her hands up, stating,
Don't kill the messenger.
before roughly throwing her arm around TORI and starting back towards the house. Rose stood by Winslow Pond, fuming for only a moment, before reassuring herself that she could and would stop this from happening. Rose Hanover was the kind of woman who would do whatever it took to get things to go her way, because deep down, she knew what was best for the house. When Rose came back to the house, she found Frankie and Imogen sitting on either side of Ginny on the couch.
I'm not old enough to drink.
Neither am I.
Frankie took a large drink from a bottle of bubbly and passed the bottle across Ginny to Imogen.
Me neither.
Imogen took a drink herself and added gently,
But we are sisters. It's safe here.
Do not love what I'm seeing here.
Rose stated, but pushed past them to the kitchen.
Katya, handle this.
After she exited, Katya turned to Imogen and Frankie and narrowed her eyes. She then focused her gaze on Ginny and stated,
It is customary to drink immediately following an initiation.
Ginny shifted uncomfortably, but Katya quickly added,
However, you may choose your drink. We have non-alcoholic options, juice, soda, seltzer, etc.
Those are mixers, Katya.
Frankie jested, but Katya was unamused.
If I could, I would like to have some juice.
Of course.
Katya fell onto a couch and threw her feet up on OLYA's lap.
Frankie will get it for you. Imogen, go with her to make sure she doesn't spike it.
You think I would do something like that?
Frankie called behind her as she exited the room.
You have done something like that.
Imogen followed her, remembering several blackouts that Frankie was responsible for. OLYA and Katya fell into a conversation as TORI made her way across the sprawling living room.
It can be overstimulating.
To say the least.
Hang in there, sis.
Rose seems to really want to make a change.
TORI's face dropped for only a second before she forced a smile, but Ginny had definitely noticed. TORI exhaled and stood, casually mentioning over her shoulder,
Some things will never change.
Across campus, freshman besties Bubbles NUMEYER and Rebecca Hanover were elated. The two had just made it back to their dorm after a rather wild evening with Kappa Beta Kappa, the sorority for which they had just completed their initiation. They stumbled to the bathroom and playfully fought for the center spot in front of the mirror. This ended quickly as their inebriated selves locked gazes with their reflections, distorted by the drugs and alcohol in their systems. They had drastically different reactions when they saw the condition in which they had just walked across campus. Rebecca was beaming with self-satisfaction. The expectation had been that she would follow in Rose's footsteps and pledge Omega Zeta Tau. And when Rebecca had declined in a manner she considered to be respectful, Rose's face had soured. She had scolded Rebecca for failing to recognize how much hard work she had done, and considered it disrespectful that she didn't want to follow in the family tradition of pledging Omega Zeta Tau. It was no secret that Rebecca hated Rose. Rose was always the golden sister with her perfect grades, her positive attitude, her attention to detail, and her insufferable ability to get things to go her way. Just once Rebecca wanted to see Rose fail, or look like a fool, or do something that everyone wouldn't commemorate, that they wouldn't praise her for. Rebecca had accomplished her first short-term goal of her college career. She had pledged and been accepted to not only an alternative sorority, but a competing one. The Kappas were thrilled to have her too because they recognized her immediately as Rose's sister. As of this current moment, Rose still did not know, and Rebecca wanted to keep it that way. She knew Omega Zeta Tau had a very important mixer coming up because
Rose would not shut the fuck up about it on our last family video chat.
And that's when she would appear, dressed in heather gray and powder blue, Kappa's signature colors. Bubbles was doing anything but beaming, though it was important to her to not let Rebecca on that she was struggling. A follower her entire life, tonight was no different. Bubbles had followed Rebecca to Winslow Claythorne the same way she had followed her through high school. Whatever Rebecca was into, Bubbles was into. And Rebecca had loved this because as much as she hated to admit it, it made her feel like Rose. Currently, Bubbles was very close to getting sick and was afraid she was going to have to blow her
I'm fine.
cover and vomit. But Rebecca turned and left the bathroom just in time for Bubbles to make her way to a toilet. Back in the main area of their dorm, Rebecca could hear Bubbles puking and rolled her eyes.
Pathetic.
If she had her way, Bubbles would not last too long at Winslow Claythorne, or with the Kappas. In high school, Bubbles had auditioned for the spring play because Rebecca was doing it. Upon getting cast, however, she was faced with a harsh reality that she had terrible stage fright. She dropped the show immediately. Some months later, at the beginning of their junior year, Rebecca decided to try her hand at Spanish and chose it as her language requirement. Bubbles followed, of course, which Rebecca had tried to talk her out of.
Forgive me, but this is a whole ass language and you're just not smart like that.
I know I'm a fucking moron, but it'll be fun. We're gonna hablo Spanish. Yeah!
Rebecca didn't correct her. There was no point, she figured. Bubbles would fail or quit. Presently, Rebecca reminded herself to give it time. Bubbles would not last, and then Rebecca would be free to start this brand new chapter of her life. Bubbles stumbled from the bathroom muttering,
I may have drank too much.
and fell onto her bed.
Before you pass out, have you seen my laptop? I swear I packed it, but I haven't seen it in a while and I need it for class.
She was met with the loud sounds of Bubbles snoring. And she sighed. Rebecca shut off the lights and climbed into bed. She couldn't be sure where the confidence was coming from, but she felt certain she was going to have an incredible semester. Sitting poised in the back seat of a town car, Miss Hyacinth Wargrave reflected on her time spent at Winslow Claythorne. She had been the president of Kappa Beta Kappa from 1996 to 1998, and she and her sisters had all been the what's what in fashion. She glanced out the window presently at the girls she saw walking past and smiled.
Fashion really is a most peculiar thing.
It was almost like no time had passed as she saw the girls in their high-waisted jeans, crop tops with oversized denim jackets, and...
Oh, the scrunchies.
Had they come back in style? Of course, as a girl, Hyacinth had men and women dropping like flies as she strutted across campus in a similar ensemble. But somehow, now she found it tasteless. She had to adapt as things changed, and the fashion industry had ruled all of the aforementioned articles of clothing as obsolete. Scrunchies?
Absolutely not.
High-waisted jeans?
No.
The rise and fall of low-rise jeans came and went so quickly. And anything oversized that didn't cinch your waist or accentuate your curves was out of the question. And yet... here she was, peering out the back window of a town car, which was going entirely too fast in her opinion, at the array of girls with nice figures, modestly covered up by extra-large denim.
Surely the Kappas know better.
She was not headed to Kappa Beta Kappa, however. Miss Hyacinth Wargrave was destined for the house of Omega Zeta Tau, long-standing rivals of her sorority. She had received an interesting email, which she pondered presently.
Dear Hyacinth, I hope this email finds you well. My mother, Agnes Vivian, as she was known then, was a proud Kappa under your reign as president. I am in the final stages of my initiation into KPK, but my final task is to do everything in my power to bring down Omega Zeta Tau. I have pledged OZT and been accepted into their sorority, but I enlist the help of you, a former Kappa Beta Kappa president, to join me in this sabotage. You are legendary in Kappa, and I could think of no one else who I would rather work with in this ruse. I will reveal myself to you when the time is right. Or perhaps you will recognize me as Agnes's daughter. But in the meantime, I have made the necessary arrangements with the dean to bring you in as our house mother, should you accept. Attached, you will find a decoy letter suggesting you have been invited. The same letter was copied and sent to the dean. Best, anonymous.
Whoever sent the email had foolishly sent it from their campus account. But in this moment, Hyacinth couldn't remember the name, nor could she really care any less. She was happy to accept, and though this poor girl thought it would be a team effort, Hyacinth had some mischievous ideas of her own that she wanted to bring to fruition. After all, she was so terribly bored anymore. She had accomplished very little since graduating Winslow Claythorne. She had married Wendell McNew, the former president of Alpha Sigma Upsilon, but that had crashed and burned. After years of trying to conceive, he had proven to be infertile, and so Hyacinth deemed him unworthy of her time and energy. She filed for divorce, took entirely too much of what he owned, and put herself back on the market. Unfortunately, though, the men were no longer clamoring to be with her. Outside of college, outside of Greek life, she was no longer regarded as an Aphrodite. Wendell had remarried almost immediately.
To an Omega Zeta Tau of all goddamn people.
And was living what he projected on social media to be a very happy life. Hyacinth refused to believe he was happy. After all, the OZTs were frumpy and weird, and all the kids his new wife had come with weren't Wendell's, so...
How could he possibly love them as his own?
Hyacinth rolled her eyes. She was happy to be returning and poisoning Omega Zeta Tau from the inside. Perhaps this was her destiny. She was, as the anonymous letter writer had mentioned, a legend, a goddess among Kappas. This would surely etch her into Kappa history forever. The town car had stopped in front of Omega Zeta Tau. The morning sun was shining so brightly, and Hyacinth pulled on a large pair of rounded sunglasses.
Brace yourself, bitches. Mommy's home.
When Rose awoke, she was feeling considerably better than the night before. Immediately following her chemistry class, she was going to pay a visit to Dean MANDRAKES. Rose had yet to face an obstacle in her life that she couldn't bend to her will, and this would be no different. There was no need for a house mother, and surely Dean MANDRAKES would see that if Rose had a moment to explain her arguments in great detail. She inhaled deeply through her nose and exhaled through her mouth, just as the door flung open and TORI came in.
TORI, is everything okay?
There is a woman here, says she is an honorary Omega Zeta Tau per the dean, and she won't leave, and she says she is our house mother now, and you have to do something because I'm freaking out, and Frankie is loving it, that bitch, and I just don't know what to do.
Rose sat up immediately.
She's already here?
She flung off her duvet and stepped into her house slippers. As she stood, she tied her sleeping robe tight and moved swiftly past TORI, who was wringing her hands together and had gone pale in the face. As she passed, she muttered,
Contain yourself, TORI. I need you to be strong right now.
She flung open the door and descended the stairs, her gait light as a feather. Her big blue eyes, which usually radiated nothing but an inviting warmth, were cold and piercing. She was in an authoritative, predatory mode that most of the girls had never seen. At the foot of the stairs, all the girls were gathered around an expensive-looking woman. At this present moment, she was instructing Imogen and Ginny to carry her bags to whichever available room was the largest, adding as she did so,
Though I imagine I'll have my pick, considering how low you've let your numbers get.
She lifted her large frame sunglasses to the top of her head and met Rose's gaze, which even Hyacinth could see was intimidating.
You must be Miss Hanover. You have a handsome body, my dear, though if you'd like to cover up, I'm happy to wait.
Imogen, Ginny, put the bags down. Miss...
Hyacinth Wargrave.
Miss Wargrave will not be staying here until I have spoken with the dean. Until then, you look like you could easily afford to pay for a room off campus. Call your car and leave our house.
Rose spun and began her ascent back to her room.
My dear Rose, you must be confused. After all, you're the one who invited me.
Hyacinth pulled from her coat a letter and extended her hand. Rose stopped and turned around slowly. She took the letter and, as she read it, her hardened eyes softened, now showing worry, confusion, and defeat.
I didn't write this.
No. Are you suggesting forgery? That's exciting.
I mean, it must be, but this handwriting... How could someone...
She trailed off as her eyes looked around the room. It was clear to everyone now that Rose was terrified.
What about the handwriting, my angel?
Hyacinth took a step forward, now just a smidge too far into Rose's personal space.
It's mine.
Rose turned to Katya. Katya was the only face she could bear to see at this moment. For the first time in her life, Rose felt panicked. She felt out of control, and like the room was spinning.
I need to sit down.
She fell into a chair, and Katya and Tori were immediately by her side.
You do that, Dove. Imogen and Virginia, was it? My bags.
The two girls obeyed, and Hyacinth walked in a breathy circle in the foyer, scanning the faces of the girls. None of them looked even vaguely like her sister Agnes, and she thought to herself that the anonymous writer must really take after her father. She inhaled deeply and released.
It's good to be home.
About 30 minutes had passed, and Tori was closing the door to OLYA's room behind her. She was pacing, anxiously laughing at the shit show that had just occurred.
What the actual fuck?
Calm down.
OLYA took Tori's hand and instructed her to breathe. She then led her to the bed, where they both sat down.
Rose will take care of this. You know she will.
I don't know, babe. This is fucking wild. And I have never seen Rose crumble like that before.
She's human, and so is Hyacinth. Give Rose a chance to think on this, and she will find a solution.
She took Tori's chin and lifted her face up so she may kiss her.
We will be okay.
Okay. You're right.
OLYA held Tori tightly.
I don't know what I would do without you.
She inhaled deeply, swimming in the jasmine fragrance OLYA considered her signature.
I know it's probably not the time, considering house mother, but I would like to revisit the idea.
Tori shook her head and scooted away from OLYA just an inch, but OLYA noticed.
No, we can't.
Are you serious?
OLYA and Tori had had this same conversation many times, and it always led to Tori shutting down. Each time OLYA would bring it up, She hoped that Tori would be more receptive. She could tell that this time, nothing had changed.
The girls will not care. Rose will not care. She's progressive and...
Not that progressive.
I think you underestimate her.
Okay, last week, I was feeling like absolute shit and tried to leave the house in sweatpants. And she stopped me and asked if I was sick. I told her, no, I was just low on spoons. And she told me sweats weren't a good look during rush. I get that our numbers are low, but the mentality that I needed to present as hot all week is still counterproductive to her cause. She picks and chooses when it's appropriate to be progressive, and sometimes when the old views work in her favor, she...
Fine. Then you overestimate who is going to give a shit that we're lesbians.
I'm not a lesbian.
She stated sternly before continuing.
And you know the other girls will talk. At the very least, it will become fodder for Frankie when she's jabbing us with her insensitive jokes, and I just can't.
Shh, baby.
OLYA put her hand on Tori's knee, but Tori brushed it off and stood. OLYA decided not to finish her thought, and instead stood to leave. When she reached the door, Tori spoke.
I'm sorry. It's my upbringing. You know that.
It is bullshit, Victoria. When are you going to recognize that being gay isn't bad?
I'm not gay!
Your face was between my legs last night.
Oh, shh.
This may not be the move for me anymore. I am so in love with you, Tori, but you have to get past this ingrained homophobia.
She flung open the door and gasped when she saw Hyacinth was standing just outside. OLYA and Tori froze in place, and Hyacinth slowly smiled, turned, and walked away. OLYA looked back apologetically at Tori. She pushed past OLYA and made it back to her own room before bursting into tears. GINNY and Imogen had just sat down the last of Hyacinth's bags and exited her room. Imogen's face had been pensive for several minutes, as she couldn't quite shake the idea that she had seen Hyacinth's face before, but she couldn't remember where. The name was familiar, but not one that she remembered learning about when studying the sorority's history. And yet this woman claimed to be an honorary sister, not a previous one.
How are you feeling?
An interesting situation. On one hand, I think Rose has displayed exemplary leadership, and this feels, for lack of a better phrase, fucked up. On the other hand, you hear stories of things that bond sisters together, and I did not expect to be presented with a bonding experience quite so soon. Do you think I should be worried?
No. Rose will figure something out. She always does. I appreciate your trust in her, your clear dedication to the sisterhood. I wasn't quite sure what to think of you at first, to be honest, but I think you're going to fit in nicely here.
We'll see.
The girls spun to see Frankie approaching them.
I'm still not convinced.
Imogen smiled and looked at GINNY.
Only one left to impress.
And then she took a step back.
Make it count.
Any warmth GINNY had been receiving from Imogen was gone as soon as Frankie was near.
What is it about me that doesn't convince you?
GINNY asked, not intimidated.
I have a hard time seeing how you fit in. You're quirky, which some might find cute, but you're not cute, you know? I mean, Imogen's weird, but she's kind of pretty. I don't find you pretty.
Is that so?
Quite.
Frankie stepped forward, her face very near GINNY's. But GINNY did not retreat as Frankie had anticipated. Instead, she smirked, and Frankie was a little bit taken aback by the darkness that was forming in GINNY's eyes.
Let me tell you something, Frankie. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, I am an OZT. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your intentions are as follows. It would seem you intend to bully me, as you most likely did with Imogen, with the hope that I will become a follower of yours, much like Imogen.
Frankie retreated back a step.
I will not follow you, because you have proven in the short time that I have been here that you do not deserve even an ounce of my respect. Your views and your ideals are archaic, and I imagine the only reason you belong to this sorority is because you came in during the reign of RENÉ, who sounds like an easy pass for a role model in your eyes. I am the new face of Greek life, and you are the old face, and it shows. The aging, I mean. Consider an under-eye cream, as you traditional sisters value beauty so much. Or just try to get some more sleep. You may find yourself in a better mood.
She turned and walked away, just as Hyacinth came around the corner and opened the door to her room. She exchanged a look with the still stunned Frankie and commented,
The girl was entirely out of line, but you may want to consider the cream. From one beauty to another, a man will tire you out. It's inevitable. But it doesn't help if you're already tired before you catch one.
And then she exited into her room. The next morning, Rose and Katya quietly made arrangements with the sisters to have an emergency house meeting.
How do you intend to get Hyacinth out of the house?
She's a house mother. It sounds glitzy and glamorous, but she's basically our servant.
Rose replied before knocking loudly on Hyacinth's bedroom door.
Hyacinth, it's 8:30 and Omega Zeta Tau never sleep past 8. Rise and shine.
She stepped back, and a moment later, the door opened.
We have a list of things that you'll need to pick up for us today.
Rose had regained her composure after a night to sleep on it, much like how OLYA had predicted.
Excuse me?
You want to be our house mother? Then be our house mother. We have groceries that will need to be picked up, laundry that you'll need to have done this afternoon for our mixer tonight, and checks that you'll need to deliver to the Treasury office. Of course, if that's too much for you to handle, I'm sure the dean will be able to find us a house mother who can.
Oh, no, of course. I have errands of my own to do today, so give me some time to get ready. And
The sooner you can get on it, the better.
surely you won't have me representing the house like this.
Well, you look amazing. It doesn't matter what you wear.
Yeah, super
Oh,
cute.
Cute, yeah.
You could use an eye cream.
On with it then.
She turned and walked away. The other girls followed her in a formation that told Hyacinth definitively who was in charge. 20 minutes later, Hyacinth left, and Rose turned to her girls.
Something must be done.
What can we do?
Kill her.
Katya poised herself to scold Frankie, but Rose spoke first.
We will keep that option on the back burner. In the meantime, I think we need to try and run her ragged. Ask for everything you can possibly think of, no matter how trivial. This woman is here for a reason, and we need to work together to figure out what that may be. Keep your eyes and ears open.
Did you speak with the dean?
I decided against it. The dean knew full well that Hyacinth was coming and opted to indirectly get me that information the day before her arrival. I don't know that pleading with her is going to be the right expense of my energy right now.
And we revisit the idea of killing her?
Frankie!
What? I had to take an emotional processing class last semester for nursing. It's a technique I learned about. Humans are inherently violent. It cannot be denied. We casually throw around the idea of killing things that get in our way all the time. Professor Barclay had a lot to say on it. We explored the concept that sometimes talking things like this out can lead to the best way to release resentment and find a less intense solution.
I hardly think that's true.
How would you propose we kill her?
Rose cautiously encouraged the conversation.
While Imogen and Ginny were moving her luggage, Imogen noticed that she's on nifedipine, which I happen to know can lead to a serious reaction when mixed with grapefruit. We make her a cocktail with grapefruit juice and see if the contraindications are true.
I don't think that leads to death. My sister is on a similar medication, and I've never heard our parents refer to it as fatal necessarily. They just say it can lower her blood pressure and make her dizzy.
Katya was staring at her as though she barely recognized her.
Look, I don't know for sure, but if she's prone to heart shit, it could lead to other complications and at the very least make her unfit for work.
What are we even talking about? Are we gonna kill this bitch?
Of course not. I was just simply considering Frankie's theory.
Do you feel less resentful?
Not in the least.
Rose sat down. She took a deep breath and stated,
We will run her like crazy, overwhelm her, and break her down emotionally.
And if she withstands that, we will get grapefruit into her system while she's in a weakened state. It will not kill her, but if we can get her to resign on her own, then our hands are clean.
Everyone looked at one another and then started to nod in cautious agreement. Only Katya and Ginny were in disagreement and shared a concerned look. Bubbles came into her dorm after a rough day to find Rebecca, whose massive smile was lit up by the glow of a laptop screen. Despite the day she had had, Bubbles felt it all wash away being back home with Rebecca, who looked like she was in a pleasant mood. It wasn't uncommon for Bubbles to feel like she was walking on eggshells with Rebecca, and so when she entered into a warm and welcome energy like this, she cherished it.
What's going on, girlfriend?
Bubbles asked, her playful banter sounding incredibly forced and unnatural.
Rose has been hacked! Remember how I told you I was just gonna let Rose find me wearing heather gray and powder blue and she'd be gagged for all time?
Yes, a brilliant plan.
Wrong! It's tired and dated and boring, and how dare you let me think otherwise? This is even better. They have a mixer tonight, and read this post.
She shifted the laptop to face Bubbles, who quickly skimmed the post and widened her eyes.
Wow.
Her reaction was not what Rebecca had hoped for.
What? You don't seem into it.
It's intense. But it'll show those bitches.
Right. This will for sure have her feeling so low that when we walk in tonight wearing Kappa colors, she'll just shatter.
Rebecca was enjoying what would surely lead to her sister's misery, before noticing that Bubbles was holding her laptop.
Is that my laptop?
Yes. Sorry, I spaced. I ran into Rose at the quad and she handed it off to me. She said she found it in her luggage and was gonna drop it off later.
We're like 3 fucking weeks into the semester and she couldn't bother to text or call? She's such a twat. Oh well, I took this one from my lab, but I can return it tomorrow.
She grinned and then suggested,
Pinot?
It was well after 5 p.m. when Hyacinth finally returned to the house. Rose, who was currently putting laundry from the washer into the dryer, inquired,
Where the fuck have you been?
Excuse me?
Hyacinth walked into the kitchen and set the groceries down on the island. A moment later, Rose entered.
You were gone all day, and now I'm stuck doing the laundry. You know tonight is an important party, and the girls might not have anything to wear.
You'll all look fine. It doesn't matter what you wear.
She started to unpack the groceries, and Rose cocked her head when she pulled out a bottle of Drano.
Why did you get Drano? That wasn't on the list.
Oh, for the suicide.
House Mother Hyacinth looked up from the bags, her eyes twinkling with what Rose in this moment could only describe as pure evil.
The what?
The suicide? The mass suicide committed by you and the rest of the sisters at Omega Zeta Tau?
Hyacinth took a step out from behind the island and crossed towards Rose.
You should know. You posted about it.
Hyacinth was quick and held her phone up in front of Rose's face, where Rose saw a post made on her Facebook account that read,
New house mother. Sister Pledge Kappa. Failing as president. Omega Zeta Tau party tonight? Come join us as we kill ourselves.
Rose's eyes were welling with tears, and she was absolutely speechless. Hyacinth pulled the phone back and slid it in her pocket. As she turned to go back to the kitchen island, she muttered,
It's a dramatic, attention-getting post, which I love. Too many emojis for my taste, but you kids know best. At any rate, sweetheart, I wanted to be thoughtful and take something off your plate, so I went ahead and grabbed the Drano for you. I'll just leave it here for when you want to make your Drano daiquiris.
With that, she exited the kitchen, stepping over Rose, who had collapsed to the floor. It was Imogen who saw the post first. She was upstairs in her room, sitting in front of Frankie, who was straightening her hair and audibly gasped. She showed it to Frankie, whose response was to laugh, which infuriated Imogen. She stood promptly and went to Tori's room, where she and Ginny were looking through a large pile of clothes.
Do you know if the laundry is done? I don't have anything clean that's our shade of green, and you know Rose will flip if I'm not in colors.
Did you see Rose's post? She totally got hacked.
Imogen handed her phone off to Tori, and Ginny looked at the post over her shoulder.
What the fuck?
The three moved fast for OLYA's room, catching KATYA coming out of the bathroom. Tori said without stopping,
Go make sure Rose is okay. Her Facebook got hacked, and it's ugly.
Oh, shit.
KATYA descended the stairs and followed the sounds of Rose sobbing. She found her in a crumpled heap beneath the kitchen island, her eyes swollen and red from crying.
Come here.
She cradled Rose and held her close. She rocked back and forth and stroked her hair, not knowing what else to do. Upstairs, Imogen, Tori, and Ginny had reached OLYA's room, but she wasn't there. Frankie had joined them by this point.
Where could she be?
Tori pulled out her phone and called her, but it went straight to voicemail.
Shit.
Tori spun and went back to the stairs. The others followed her, and they all descended just as KATYA and Rose emerged from the kitchen. Rose was still holding on to KATYA as the others crowded around.
Where is your phone?
KATYA asked, and Rose handed it to her.
I'm going to delete the post.
KATYA opened the Facebook app and saw the post for the first time. She looked at the other girls in disgust, took a screenshot per Rose's request, and promptly deleted the post.
There, it's deleted. It's only got like 20 likes, and they were mostly Kappas, so we should be okay. Do you want to make a statement of some kind?
Handle it. The party will still happen.
My girl.
Frankie took Rose from KATYA and helped her up the stairs.
Let's get your face washed and your tits up, honey. A nice hung Sigma Omicron 5 will make you feel better.
Just as the two reached the top of the stairs, OLYA burst through the front door.
Yo, you will not fucking believe what
We deleted the post. It's over now.
What post?
Wait, what are you talking about?
RENÉ is dead, and it's a wild story. I was selling weed at Alpha Sigma Upsilon, and the brothers were talking about it. She drank poison and killed herself, and the cops found her holding a fucking note.
Jesus! Like a suicide note?
Something like that? I don't know, man. This shit is wild.
Did they say what it said?
OLYA looked at her as though she didn't want to say, and the girls pressed her further. Finally, KATYA grabbed her by the arm and asked again.
Did they say what it said?
Fuck. Yes, they did.
OLYA bit her lip, and she finally went on.
It said, anything for house mother.
An hour later, 7 girls sat dressed in olive green and pear white, nervously shifting their eyes around, wringing their hands and not sure what to say or do. Surprisingly, it was GINNY who spoke first.
I would like to suggest we do a cleansing ritual.
That's a good idea.
She nodded her head and tried to pump herself up.
Let me think of an uplifting song. In the meantime, we should head to the ritual room.
You know, I'm not really in the mood for a ritual right now.
It'll be good for morale. After all, this is part of the reason we have rituals. We can't start a party in the state we're in, but tonight is too important not to move forward. Let's cleanse our minds, solidify our sisterhood, and take back the night. Whoever made that post is—
I know who made that post.
Rose finally looked up.
I didn't tell any of you this, but my sister Rebecca started at Winslow Claythorne this semester. I had heard it whispered that she was going to pledge Kappa Beta Kappa, and she is the only person who knew my password. Rebecca has always been a spiteful little bitch. But this time she just took it too far.
The girls were silent for only a moment before KATYA took her hand and squeezed.
We are your sisters. We will get through this. You're Rose fucking Hanover. You're unstoppable.
Yeah, for real. The past couple of days have been a shit show, and I think anyone would buckle under that pressure. But you will bounce back and lead us like you always do. You got this.
TORI took her other hand.
I love you all. I know I have been hard on you, and I know I have enforced a lot of change. Some of you have taken to it more than others, but I see the efforts. I want to believe that what we do will make a change. I want to believe that we can make Greek life more accepting and change it for the better. All of us will play a very crucial part in that.
She wiped away her tears and clapped her hands together.
Let's fucking do this ritual. Omega Zeta Tau.
Omega Zeta Tau! Omega Zeta Tau!
Trust your sisterhood loyally. Vow to be eternally serving me. Serving me, we're bound to be OZT. OZT, eternally OZT.
The time was now 7:15, and the girls had split up after their ritual to do final touches to their hair and makeup. OLYA had led an incredible ritual, and spirits were very high. Rose, who was feeling empowered again, knocked on the door to Hyacinth's room. but there was no answer.
Fuck it.
Rose threw open the door and walked in. OLYA was in her room, darkening her eyebrows, when the door opened and TORI came in. OLYA looked at her in the reflection of the mirror, and then went back to her eyebrows.
You look incredible.
Thank you. I loved your ritual.
Thanks. It's what I do. Is there something you need?
As a matter of fact, yes. Check your Facebook.
My Facebook? Are we already committed to a conflicting mass suicide? Tori Campbell wants to be in a relationship with you. Are you serious? Facebook official?
You got it, babe. You were right. I was being stupid. And my asshole family can go fuck themselves. I love you like I have never loved anyone else. And I don't want to lose you. Frankie will be a twat about it, but that's just Frankie, and I don't even know how much we like her. And Rose will probably be fine, like you said.
I love you. Now get that sweet ass over here.
TORI came to her, and just as the two started to kiss, a loud yelling came from the hall. They both exited, where they saw Rose pacing and summoning the sisters to her. Everyone met Rose at the top of the stairs, and she instructed them to follow her down. As they descended, she spoke.
Hyacinth, that fucking bitch. She's an imposter. I went into her room and saw that her laptop was open to an email that she received from an anonymous source claiming to be an OZT. She's a former fucking Kappa. And she was somehow fucking invited into this house as an honorary Omega to rip us apart from the inside out. The author claimed to be a current Kappa whose final rite of initiation was to ruin us. And so she's enlisted Hyacinth's help.
What the hell?
Yes, Ginny, what the hell? In the email, the author claimed to have just been accepted into Omega Zeta Tau, and since you are the only person who pledged, it's looking really sus.
I swear to you, that wasn't me. Ask Imogen. The Hesters have been Omega Zeta Taus for generations.
It's true. Ginny is a legacy through and through. Holy shit.
What?
I knew I recognized Hyacinth's face and name. Part of my duties as historian are to know everything about our house, but I also wanted to know more about the other sororities to know, you know? So I obviously looked at Kappa, Beta Kappa, because they're our sworn rivals, and that must be how I recognized her face. She was not just a Kappa, Beta Kappa. She was one of their best presidents. Fuck. I'm so sorry. I didn't think of it sooner.
Fuck beans, this shit is wild. The goddamn wolf in the hen house.
Don't call us hens.
Ugh.
How do you want us to proceed?
You and Ginny, I want you to go to the dean. I'll text you screenshots, Katya. Show her this email and tell her to get here immediately.
She was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell.
Shit, is it 7?
I'll get it. Keep laying out the plans, boss.
OLYA commented and left the room.
When the dean gets here, I'll pull her aside and talk to her. Hopefully this party gets off to a late start.
Oh, you are not welcome here.
OLYA could be heard yelling from the opposite room, and finally came in right behind Rebecca and Bubbles, who wore heather gray and powder blue.
Nice digs. It's no Kappa, but it's cute.
Come on.
Oh, you're so generous, Beck.
I know. I'm like super nice. So, sis, this is a wild party.
Rose looked at Katya, and she and Ginny exited.
Hello, Rebecca. On behalf of OZT, we want to thank you for trying your hand at marketing earlier, but Imogen has it covered.
What is she talking about?
She's talking about social media, but I have no idea what she's getting at.
I know you hacked my account.
I really wish I could take the credit, but I did not do that. I guess more people hate you than just me.
Rebecca locked gazes with Rose.
What are you doing here?
For the first time since she walked in, Rebecca's expression was genuine.
I'm confused. You texted me and told me to come here. I was planning on crashing it anyway, but then I got your text.
Rose rolled her eyes in disbelief and walked to the kitchen. Rebecca watched in amazement as the sisters all followed her without a second thought, like a herd of sheep. She and Bubbles exchanged a look before hesitantly following. They were the last to file into the kitchen, where Rose was pulling a large bowl of punch out of the bottom of the refrigerator. She set it on the counter and returned to the fridge, where she pulled out a large bottle of champagne.
Who made the punch?
Imogen asked, knowing all too well that TORI made the best punch, and Frankie's was something she never wanted to drink again. However, no one volunteered themselves, and Frankie jested.
If you want to know who made the punch, you'll have to answer these riddles free.
Rose unwrapped the champagne, popped the cork, and drank straight from the bottle. She passed the bottle to OLYA, who took a large drink, and then passed it to TORI.
No, thank you.
Okay. Come on, bitch, drink.
Yeah, seriously, drink.
Drink.
Come on, bitch, drink. Fucking drink.
Yes.
Yes.
Jesus, what the hell is wrong with you all?
Rebecca, in the past 24 hours, I have had my handwriting forged, my Facebook hacked, and now you claim that I texted you. I don't even know where my phone is. Did I ever get it back from Katya?
It's here.
TORI grabbed it from the dining room table. She handed it to Rose, who unlocked it and looked at her messages.
What the fuck?
Rose began to laugh somewhat hysterically and slid her phone down the kitchen island, where OLYA, Frankie, and Imogen crowded around it. There was a text message from Rose to Rebecca, which read,
Let's talk. Come to the party tonight. I don't want to lose you. I love you more than anyone else on this planet.
So you're saying you didn't send that? It seemed out of character, but if I'm being real, it's kind of what I've always wanted to hear from you.
Oh my god. You sweet angel.
Bubbles threw her arms around Rebecca and squeezed her tightly.
It changes nothing, because now I know you didn't send it.
I didn't. Because I don't feel that way, Rebecca. I think you are an absolutely reprehensible person, and it would be a service to the world if you were to no longer exist.
Rebecca was incredulous and could feel tears starting to form.
Fuck you and your lame ass party.
Rebecca spun around to leave.
Wait! You must take some punch when you leave. It's tradition.
What are you talking about?
Bubbles stopped, but Rebecca continued towards the front door.
It's part of our sorority's tradition. It's bad luck if guests leave a party without a drink. Please, take some for you and Rebecca.
Rose scooped a red solo cup full of punch and handed it to Bubbles. She then pulled from the fridge a pitcher of lemonade and poured it into a cup, followed by some vodka.
The punch has grapefruit juice, which you know Bex can't have, so here's an alternative. Bubbles, thank you for being a good friend to my sister. I hope you and she are happy with Kappa.
Bubbles, who was not mean by nature, smiled, nodded her head, and made her exit.
What a fucking night! Is anyone gonna come to this party?
You know what? Fuck them.
Frankie came towards Rose and pulled her in for a hug.
I give you a lot of shit, but you are doing a great job.
The rest of the sisters joined in and smothered little Rose beneath them. Then they all filled their cups with punch and headed towards the living room. Rose, who was left alone in the kitchen, checked her phone to see if she had any messages from Katya, but she did not. She poured herself a cup of punch and followed them into the living room, where she held the cup up high.
I have something to say. A speech, if you will.
Frankie hooted and hollered. OLYA threw her hand on Tori's lap, and Imogen sat cross-legged on the floor. They held out their cups.
Firstly, are you two dating?
We are.
Tori smiled and leaned in to kiss OLYA.
Fuck, that is hot.
He's so cute. I love that for you both.
Speech.
Okay, yes. I feel like I have to say this now or I might not get another chance.
Just outside Omega Zeta Tau, Bubbles was struggling to catch up to Rebecca. But finally, Rebecca stopped and spun around.
I fucking hate her, Bubbles. I know we don't get along, but she basically just told me to fuck off and die.
She was sobbing, though it was indiscernible to Bubbles if the tears were from anger or sorrow.
I know, baby, but who needs her? The Omegas are sad Kappa wannabes, and guess what, slut? We're Kappas, like real ones.
Bubbles passed the lemonade to Rebecca.
Let's get litty like a titty and forget all about them.
You're right.
Rebecca took a couple sips from her cup and recoiled at how strong it was.
God damn, that's strong. Guess we can find another party to crash. Because, you know, vodka makes me want to dance.
She took another large gulp and added,
Maybe I don't say it enough, but you're my best friend, and I'm so grateful for you.
I love you too, Sweetback. Cheers.
Bubbles threw back her drink and followed Rebecca as she started down the path towards Sorority Row.
Those girls in there think that Rose cares about them, but she doesn't. My whole life, all I've ever known Rose to care about is herself. Whatever. One day, they'll see.
Rebecca was annoyed by the sound of Bubbles coughing and choking on her drink, which she had thrown back like a drunken frat brother. There's always goddamn something with Bubbles. And so Rebecca finished her drink, tossed the solo cup onto the Omega's lawn, and continued towards Kappa House, which you could see at the end of the row. She knew Bubbles was right behind her, but then it occurred that this choking was going on a bit long. She stopped and turned back around, where she saw Bubbles foaming at the mouth.
Bubbles?
With her last ounce of strength, Bubbles reached her hands out towards Rebecca and fell face first onto the sidewalk.
You can lower your cups for now because this may be lengthy, but please do wait to drink. You know, tradition and all.
Rose set her cup down and gesticulated with both hands like a minister at a podium, like a leader.
You are all my girls, and I love you, even when you make me insane. The past few days have been fucking stupid. But you all have really shown up for me and for Omega Zeta Tau. I can't express how much this means to me. This sorority means so much to me. You all know that. I have vowed to make this a safer place, a better place where girls like GINNY can feel welcome, where girls don't have to hide that they like other girls. Fuck. I even hope that one day our sorority will accept trans women or non-binary folks. I have busted my ass so much in hopes that I would be able to see that through before I graduated, but I have recently discovered that it is too great a task for me alone. How could I possibly do that when there is so much poison rooted so deeply in our system? Can one sorority really make a difference?
Fuck yeah! Omegas can and will make change, Ma.
Yeah, we are with you till the end.
Together, we will be heard.
After all, everyone knows that Rose Hanover gets shit done.
So glad you think so, but even we aren't perfect. I see the things that go on in this house, and I'm even guilty of some of it. Tori, it's sort of been weighing on me how I didn't let you wear sweats out of the house last week.
Don't sweat it.
Are you kidding? 2 whole semesters in this house, and you finally make a joke and it's that?
The girls laughed, and though it was hard for her, Tori let it wash over her. Rose smiled sweetly as the tears formed behind her big blue eyes.
Anyway, we have done all that we can do. We'll just have to do better. To Omega Zeta Tau, no matter the cost.
To Omega Zeta Tau!
Imogen, who was closest to the coffee table, caught Rose's solo cup peripherally and noticed she had not had her punch.
Rose, you didn't.
And then she coughed. There was an unfamiliar pain in her mouth, from her tongue down the back of her throat. She heard coughing from behind her, and though her eyes were starting to well with tears from coughing, she was able to see OLYA, Tori, and Frankie grasping at their throats. They all started to foam at the mouth as the abdominal pain intensified. Everyone started to vomit, and finally their vision started to blur. The last thing any of them would see was Rose, sitting across from them, twisting her hands nervously and stating,
In order to reach our goal, we have to start over completely. I will always love you, my sisters, but this had to be done.
Rose did not waste a single moment. She stood and initiated the next phase of her plan. She had just finished placing prop notes into the hands of the 4 corpses around her, all of which read,
Anything for House Mother.
When there came a haphazard banging on the door. Rose picked up a heavy candlestick from the fireplace mantel and hid it behind her back. She continued towards the front door, and as she got closer, she could hear that the banging was accompanied by someone screaming and pleading for help. She unlocked the door and started to open it, but it burst open, and Rebecca came inside.
Call the police!
She was weak, out of breath, and leaned against a chair to help her stand. She had worked herself into such a frenzy that she was starting to feel a little lightheaded.
Did you drink your lemonade?
Rose closed and locked the door.
Bubbles is dead! I think...
Rebecca was struggling to get the words out. She was really out of breath, and the dizziness was increasing.
I feel so...
You did.
Rose casually walked towards Rebecca, and with the gentlest shove, sent Rebecca crashing to the floor.
Grapefruit juice mixed with nifedipine may cause dizziness, low blood pressure, fatigue, nausea, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't lying when I said it was in the punch, but it's also in that lemonade, so... Anyway, let's get this over with. This feels really icky, and I am not feeling like my best self.
Rose sat down by Rebecca, was fluttering in and out of consciousness. She set down the candlestick and continued.
I want it to be known that this was absolutely, like, my last resort. I just feel like aside from Katya and Ginny, who are freaking angels, the rest of the girls weren't going to make it in the future world of Greek life that I see in my mind. myself included. I mean, it doesn't get more toxic than premeditated murder. My poor girls. Would I have rather poisoned the Kappas? 1000% yes. Though, if all goes according to plan, which, for me, it always does, this will get the word out while simultaneously bringing down the Kappa house.
She noticed now that her sister had fallen unconscious, so she clapped her hands together and stated as Rebecca jolted awake.
Stay awake. I need someone to know how clever I've been. Hyacinth is dead upstairs. I brought her some punch with a phony attempt at making amends. She took the bait and fell dead before me. What the cops will find is an email from your campus account inviting Hyacinth, a former Kappa, here to destroy us from the inside out. An itinerary on her computer, which makes the mass suicide look like a white flag to Kappa, and the Facebook tab on your laptop logged into my account. These suicides are a representation of the toxic and blind devotion that girls like you have to your horrible houses. Fuck if I am not guilty of that too. Anything for the house, or, in this case, anything for the house mother. If that isn't the Greekest fucking thing, I don't know what is. Old Greek. I mean, not New Greek, not my Greek. Anyway, if all goes according to plan, which again, remember, it always does, a couple forthcoming events will solidify the notion that you're behind all this.
She checked her phone again to see if she had any messages from Katya, and smiled as she opened a text from only moments ago.
You could have been spared, Rebecca. You could have been part of a new era of Greek life where girls are safe from harassment, torture, ridicule, and toxic, oppressive misogyny, and yet you chose the old ways. And so you must be punished.
She noticed Rebecca rising to her feet, barely. She had clenched in her hand the candlestick that Rose had strategically placed near her. Rebecca inhaled deeply, trying to muster all of her energy. Rose gently smiled and quickly chugged her punch, just as Rebecca charged towards her, swinging the candlestick hard and smacking Rose in the side of the head. Rose went flying. She was bleeding profusely from her head, and gagging and choking as the Drano eviscerated her esophagus. Rebecca stepped towards her and felt her legs growing weak again. She was standing above Rose by now, and with her last ounce of energy, swung another blow to the side of Rose's head. Then suddenly a sound. The lock to the front door unbolting. She slowly turned around to see Katya, GINNY, and Dean Mandraques standing in horror and disbelief in the doorway. Rebecca was hysterical. But surely this is what she always wanted. For the world to see Rose for the monster that she truly was. And then Rebecca fainted. Only days later, Dean Barbara-Jean Mandraques stood in front of a podium, dressed in an expensive-looking pantsuit. She spoke clearly and authoritatively.
Thank you to everyone for your continued support during this horrible and essentially unspeakable act committed by the Kappa Beta Kappas this past weekend. The perpetrator, Ms. Rebecca Hanover, has been taken into police custody, and we are hard at work reconsidering how Greek life will continue on campus. Here to speak on that more is KATYA SMIRNOV, current president of the Omega Zeta Tau chapter. KATYA?
Barbara Jean stepped to the side as KATYA took the podium. GINNY stood close by.
Thank you, Dean MANDRAKES. As many of you know, our late president, Rose Hanover, was purely dedicated to the reinvention of Greek life here on campus. While many would argue that the old ways don't usually go as far as the Kappa attack on Omega House, hazing and self-deprecating initiations were the catalyst to this horrible event. That is what Rose wanted to change. She wanted to take the amazing sisterhoods and brotherhoods that Greek life offers, the bond, the unity, the sense of safety and belonging, and she wanted to focus on those things. She wanted our chapters, all of them, to be more inclusive. She wanted to welcome folks with disabilities, sisters of color, our trans sisters and our non-binary members, our queer sisters, sisters who liked Dungeons and Dragons, or who didn't want to shave their legs or wear makeup. She wanted everyone to feel welcome and safe. And that can still be a reality. That will be our reality. There is still so much work to do, but Rose, I will make you proud. We will make you proud. Rest now, Angel. We can take it from here.